and Kenny Cunningham is with us. Kenny, I don't know if you heard the end of Enda Stevens there, but it's interesting that players are teachable even when you think it might be too late, that good players are coachable season in, season out, and good managers are always looking to improve their players. And Enda Stevens is a testament. He's the stereotypical now Irish late bloomer, but geez, what a player at the moment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I did actually just hear the last minute there. It's really interesting. Some have actually resonated with me because just personal experience, even though obviously I've been playing some years before I ended up coming over from an Irish background. Generally in terms of maybe the coaching part of the game, maybe the tactical side in terms of understanding the game, learning about the game, your own position on the pitch there. You know, don't necessarily get a huge amount of that before you head over. My experience was with managers, just maybe parents or people who are stepping in looking to help out, but generally wouldn't be able to give you too much for help in terms of your basic understanding of the game. So when you go over to England, you hope that naturally comes, and people would expect that's something which is it's an automatic, it's a given when you go into a professional setup, but it's not always the case. You can just get yourself in couple of situations where maybe you're playing under a manager who isn't particularly good coach, maybe hasn't got the time to put in those kind of 1v1 situations with the player, and you can, you know, time passes 3, 4, 5 years, you be in your mid-20s and you haven't had that kind of football and education that Enda is speaking about. And we're not even now talking about in terms of your physical condition, diet and all those type of things, you know, so very interesting to listen to him. It didn't actually surprise me, but thankfully that he had that experience where kind of Paul Cook opened his eyes. He's obviously driven himself on. He must take a bit of credit for that himself. Obviously pushing himself and looking to better himself. And then Chris Wilder again, that was very interesting in terms of opening his eyes up as well. So it is important if you get yourself in the right situation at the right time. Good managers, good coach, not necessarily good managers, yeah, but good coaches, good number twos, who are prepared to put the time in with you on a load of different levels, then your game can really come on leaps and bounds, and probably Enda's a great example of that.
I'm always a little bit surprised that these Premier League squads are so big, and there's actually a very small number of coaches who are ultimately working on the coaching. Like, there isn't really a position group, there isn't really a, you know, so there'll be a goalkeeper coach and there'll be a bunch of people working with the underage teams all the way up, but then there might only be 2 or 3 coaches working for the entire first team squad. When you think about it, like, everybody benefits from a little bit of one-to-one. Somebody who's like just looking at you and just being responsible for your position group. Do you see that happening at some point down the line where somebody goes, actually, I'm going to have 10 coaches here and we're going to spend, you know, is it a trust thing? Is it, why did that not evolve in football the way it has in other sports?
Well, I think it has, yeah. It probably has in all honesty. I don't think you necessarily need you're probably exaggerating there a little bit in terms of the 10, but I take your point in terms of having enough personnel on the ground. Some managers actually manage are very hands-on. Maybe the likes of Guardiola and a number of others are actually coaches. Some very good managers are very good coaches and do the work on the training pitch, potentially a little bit of one-to-one. And it's not necessarily all about a bag of balls over the shoulder, dragging the lad onto the training pitch and working with him after training time and time again. Although that helps, I actually benefited from that very early in my career. I had 2 very good coaches when I first went over to England at Millwall. Steve Harrison, the ex-England coach, and Ian Evans, who was actually mixed number 2 for a long period of time, actually put a lot of time in me in a 1v1 situation. I really benefited from that on a load of different levels, clearly from just like listening and learning and just practically doing the work on the training pitch, but also the fact that coaches are prepared to invest in you in those kind of 1v1 situations, like a young professional, kind of no reputation, nobody really, but the fact they're actually prepared to put the time in me and try and better me, that kind of helped me confidence as well. Now at the bigger clubs, more personnel on the ground, that shouldn't be a problem. But I think clubs do it, and it's not necessarily on the pitch there. It can be in the video analysis room, sitting you down after the game on a Monday morning, 20 minutes, let's have a look at your game, like a bit of visual analysis. Sometimes on the training pitch you're talking to people and they haven't got a clear picture of what you're saying. For me, far better to sit them down in front of the TV screen and break their game down, go through certain aspects of the game. But the principle's still the same in terms of being proactive with your coach. And so, yeah, I think it has come on, Jer, in the modern game, particularly at the bigger clubs, but at any level, all the way down the leagues for me, that kind of 1v1 interaction between coach and player is still invaluable. All
right, 12 minutes past 8, we're talking with Kenny Cunningham this morning. We want to talk about the sack race because it is effectively sack season now, as we're 5 weeks out from...
Santa's sack.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, some of them get massive payoffs, so I know traditionally you'd be like, oh, you don't want to talk about anybody getting the sack, but like sometimes it's 12 million quid in cash in one go. You're like, thanks very much.
Exactly, good point. That is a great Christmas present. Pochettino's had his already.
Yeah, or, I mean, I don't know if they actually pay you cash. I don't know if Daniel Levy will just keep you on the same...
Oh, yeah, they just roll out on the table there in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, one of those second-hand car salesmen, roll the cash.
Back up the Briggs Ally truck. Arsenal, let's start with them, because Unai Emery seems to be a dead man walking. The mood music has been pretty grim for a number of weeks, but it seems to have tipped over to the point where it's an impossibility that he's not going. The question is when.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument now. I was actually still a little bit optimistic prior to the game Saturday, actually, Ger. I just felt as if there was a run of games coming up for them where potentially they could put back-to-back victories together. They're getting a couple of key players back from injury. And I watched the game Saturday. I looked at their team, and I generally quite like the balance of the team. Not across the back three. We know the problems they have there. David Luiz in particular, kind of Socrates are making a lot of mistakes. But they put a midfield two on the pitch of Guendouzi and Torreira. And a lot of people have been screaming for Torreira to come into the team. And myself included. You remember the impact you had when he came into the Arsenal team last year. People saying, this is great, this is what we need, a bit of physical presence there. Like, you're a going hitman now on the pitch, like sorting people out, making tackles, that real kind of physical presence. But I tell you, I was so disappointed with his performance Saturday. Never took the opportunity, was falling over, appealing for free kicks. Almost got bullied by the Southampton players in that central midfield player. He was a midfield there. He was a big disappointment. And someone else I thought coming back into him, Bellerin, Jared, at right back. I've looked at him a couple of times, and bless him, he's in his mid-20s. When he first came into the Arsenal team, he was the quickest things on two legs. He's such an athlete. He was absolutely phenomenal in terms of how quickly he could get from box to box. He looks as if that acceleration is gone. The injuries he has, I don't think he's going to get back to where he was. So that's another problem for Arsenal. Yes, some great attacking players on show, but in terms of mentality, in terms of the confidence the players have in the manager, whether they're still listening, whether the relationship is as strong as it should be, I'm not too sure. Those questions are going to be asked now going forward. And yeah, he's clearly under more pressure. I thought he'd be under less pressure after that game the weekend, but the way his team played against Southampton, where they were dominated, should have lost that game. The pressure is clearly only going to build. It's only about probably timing, Jerry, in terms of, it's not like sometimes the case he's got to go. It's sometimes the case of who's out there. Who's out there at this moment in time to bring in. Tottenham recognised Mourinho as the man who was available at this moment in time, went out and got him. Whether that person's there for Arsenal at this moment in time, I'm not too sure. They might just have to wait a little bit longer, potentially even the end of the season, before that kind of perfect fit becomes available.
That person, I think everybody would agree, Kenny, could be Maurizio Pochettino if you have your pick of everybody, but there's a good chance Maurizio Pochettino perhaps doesn't want to go to Arsenal, and that's fair enough. In your opinion, if it comes down to someone like Allegri or someone like Mikel Arteta, is that a decision that you make now, that you get out Unai Emery and get in one of the two of them?
Well, it depends how badly things are behind the scenes, Owen. I think if his relationship's broken down between him and the players have kind of lost confidence in him, have stopped listening, well then I think for me it's better to get him out, even if it's an interim appointment. Freddie Ljungberg's there, Mertesacker there is the football club, almost like an interim manager before that type of manager becomes available. You're talking about Allegri's available at the moment. Arteta, you'd have to prize him out from Manchester City, possibly at the end of the season. Vieira, even if France, I wouldn't rule out, although he's only been over there a year, potentially at the end of the season. But you're right, these things take time. I don't necessarily feel if you've got to get him out immediately, but certainly if you feel as if the whole thing's broken, then possibly he needs to go, and an interim manager needs to be put in between now and the end of the season.
Is Pochettino the right man for that job?
No chance.
I mean, why not?
Chance. I'd be very surprised if he actually took another job in England. For me, I've probably gone on record before. This was before he was sacked, saying that eventually if he does go, and I thought he would go. I didn't think it'd be as quickly as this. I think the fact Mourinho was available, Levy jumped, didn't want Mourinho going to another club over the next maybe couple of months.
Would he do a good job, though, Kenny?
I just think his bond is that strong with the club, his relationships are that strong amongst the players and the support base. He strikes me a particularly loyal person, Pochettino. I don't feel he'll jump from Tottenham to another English club. That's my kind of gut feeling. I feel as if he'll go abroad if the opportunity presents itself. There's a job at Bourne there at the moment. I'm not too sure how keen he is on that particular job. There's an interim manager in place there. But for me, that must be an attraction to go to Bayern Munich for a period of time, and then potentially to bounce back to another English club. Then after that for me kind of makes more sense than him immediately jumping, albeit towards the end of the season or starting next year, to another English club. We're only probably talking about Manchester United here, I suppose, if we've ruled Arsenal out of the equation.
Do you think Pochettino's getting jealous looking at Jose Mourinho giving Dele Alli a big hug after the game, turning him into the superstar that we know he possibly can be? He was speaking after the game kind of glowingly of Dele Alli, and in the newspaper this morning, Miguel Delaney has kind of good bits on what Jose has previously said about a number 10. He said, I like a number 10 to score goals, and I like a number 10 to get into the box. And it turns out that Dele Alli could be that perfect number 10 for Jose.
Well, he has been. He has been that number 10 when he first came into the team under Pochettino. That's how he played on. That was kind of called a modern day number 10. Not somebody who's constantly looking to get the ball into feet and link things up, but somebody who could actually race, run the channels as well, kind of arrive into the box, can finish, and he had the kind of physical presence, real kind of athleticism to him. And that's what he did for us in Tottenham jersey. Remember 2 goals against, famous game against Chelsea midweek. Wire Hart laying crosses into the box. I think with Azpilicueta arriving late the back stick, two-headed goal. I think they won the game 2-1, and he was absolutely phenomenal. But he's gone away from that a little bit. He's kind of played in 1 or 2 different areas. Obviously, injuries have hampered him, but you do sense as if Mourinho feels this Ali could be a key player from going forward if he can tap into that kind of ability in that position. For me, it is his actual best position. Then he'll be onto something. But yeah, must hurt Pochettino a little bit. Must be an odd feeling from actually looking from a distance, looking at this thing develop.
Because he knows that he has that potential to get that out of them, and it's.
Well, he's got it. Pochettino's got it. I don't think it's a case of Pochettino's looking and saying, "Oh, if only would have got a bit more Dele Alli." I think there's other things at play. He's had a lot of injuries during that period of time, which I think has kind of held him back. We're talking about Bellerin at Arsenal, but I look at Ali, I still think physically he'll get himself back to the level where he was, just a little bit more now in terms of confidence, and actually get him into the area of the pitch now, which kind of best suits him. And looking at Mourinho, he went for kind of 2 holding midfielders of the weekend. That was interesting. Dyer, it was, and Harry Winks was in central midfield, just sitting behind the ball, real pace on the flanks, Moura and Son, and Ali in that preferred position just behind Harry Kane. So even very early first game into Mourinho's reign, you just kind of seen that template in terms of locking down the centre of that midfield, don't vacate that area at the pitch, pace down the flanks, a real kind of structure, not a defensive structure, but more of a slightly more conservative structure in terms of how he's going to go about things.
West Ham are terrible though. It's and they conceded 2 goals. They were put on the rack of points in the second half. Obviously, going forward, and we've spoken about Dele Alli already, there's clearly an upshoot there. They have the players to do that. Is there a sense here at all that Mauricio Pochettino's potentially left behind a defence that needs a bit of work, that Jose Mourinho has a lot to do in terms of getting them back to a top-tier defence in terms of keeping clean sheets, in terms of keeping teams out at this point? Because that second half obviously had a few shaky moments.
Yeah, it did. It'd be interesting to see how he sees it, Mourinho. A lot of people telling me Alderweireld out the door potentially, Vertonghen, Danny Rose. Wouldn't bother me, Danny Rose, to be honest with you, some of the comments he's made. I think Davies is a decent replacement there. Sessegnon there that he's got as well. I just feel as if I'd like to see him keep hold of Alderweireld. I'm a huge fan of Alderweireld, but again, he's not getting over the ground as quickly as he was a couple of years ago, but he's a vastly experienced defender and a good defender, and I have a feeling Mourinho might try and protect him a little bit in terms of maybe not opening up the team so much, not sending those fullbacks necessarily as far and as wide, high up the pitch, just be a little bit more compact, that defensive unit, and actually protect your centre halves. Even for Tongan, you could make this argument a little bit more. That lack of pace, that half yard which they haven't got now, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got to throw them out with the garbage. You can keep in the team, use their other qualities, but protect them a little bit more in terms of that defensive cover in front that I'm talking about, those 2 kind of holding midfielders, and also those full-backs from the side, just holding their positions a bit more and being a little bit more compact, so not squeezing as high up the pitch and maybe as expansive as they were before, where the likes of Alderweireld and Vertonghen were at times defending 1v1 kind of counter-attacking situations. I don't think they're getting to the stage they can't do that anymore, but doesn't necessarily mean you have to throw them out. It'll be interesting to see if Mourinho just tinkers the team a little bit just to protect those players at centre-half. He's got Sanchez, young fight there as well, so I don't think it's a case you've got to go out and sign 4 new defenders. It might be just a case just tweaking things a little bit defensively just to accommodate the players in terms of where they are at the moment.
It's kind of tough to actually think of many centre-backs so far this season, Kenny, that have been widely lauded. Of course, like last season we had the best centre-back in the world playing in the Premier League in Virgil van Dijk. Obviously, Liverpool's clean sheet record this season has been poor. That'll be used as a stick to beat them with. And almost when you look through the centre-back performances over the course of the weekend, Fernandinho was one of the ones that stood out. It has been hard to kind of pinpoint the centre-back or the centre-back partnerships that have really been solid and that have really been performing above expectations so far this season.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Owen. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, in terms of partnerships, yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of defensive units, you probably look at the Sheffield United unit from last night. John wasn't playing, and Jagielka came back in last night. But John Egan, Jack O'Connell to his left, and Basham as a defensive three. A lot have been talking about in terms of how they've been getting forward and overlapping runs, etc. But in terms of how they've defended as a trio, I've been very impressed with. There probably hasn't been too many better than them over the course of the season, Owen. And certainly Van Dijk and another. Yeah, absolutely. For me, again, a little bit surprised Gomez hasn't got a lot more playing time there, but that's pretty secure. Manchester City is probably going to cost them the title this season in terms of the problems they have at centre-half. You're absolutely right. And even Chelsea, the game against Chelsea yesterday, you can see Chelsea probably haven't got a settled central defensive pair in either, although the likes of Rudiger, Christian can come back into the equation there. So you're absolutely right. No matter what level of the table that you're at, whether you're fighting relegation or competing for Championships, Europe, etc., kind of a settled defensive pair, or if it's a three, if that's the case, who understand each other, you've got a bit of cohesion there between them, kind of settled in over a period of time. Certainly is a massive asset to the team.
Yeah, that Manchester City-Chelsea game was an interesting one. I saw Gary Lineker Match of the Day had the stat that it was the lowest possession statistic for Pep Guardiola in his entire club career, which is quite something given it's a game that they won. It's obviously not something that's going to make Chelsea fans that happy or anything like that, but like it's obviously not something that is kind of a change of tact at all from Manchester City, but it is obviously a situation that Chelsea managed to exploit, where they managed to get on the ball a bit more. Of course, the incisiveness of Manchester City going forward is what won them the game in the end, but in midfield, that Chelsea trio is fairly formidable.
Well, I disagree with you. I don't think it's very formidable, the Chelsea. Are you talking about the Chelsea three in midfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like Jorginho at the base of that midfield, Kante and Kovacic. So I think I just saw the extended highlights of this game, the Manchester City-Chelsea game. I think the one thing that stuck out for me, Jorginho, I'm going to say it again, Jorginho at the base of that Chelsea midfield, it cost him. Lovely midfield player, lovely pass of the ball, gets all their kind of pass and movements going. But the problem with him, and I'll keep saying and keep banging this drum, he can't defend, he can't run, and he can't tackle. And if you analyse those two Manchester City goals at the weekend, for me, he was the problem. If you look at the first goal, he gave the ball away cheaply at the halfway line. That can happen. But look at his recovery. Immediately doesn't make the first tackle, gets himself to the edge of the box, and it's a really awful. He throws himself in front of De Bruyne. He's no intention. It's a token tackle. It's like a tired tackle. He doesn't want to stay on his feet, plant his feet, and look to get a block. Secondly, when Mahrez runs at the full-back second half and cuts on the inside, when you play that system with one holding midfielder, when your full-backs get driven on the inside and they force the winger onto the inside the pitch, your holding midfielder has to get across there and come into contact. And I can guarantee you 100%, Kante is playing that position Saturday when Mahrez cuts inside the Chelsea left-back and gets his head up. He's not looking towards the goal, he's looking towards Kante, racing towards him, looking to make a tackle, or at worst force him across the pitch. And that's the problem with Chelsea are going to have going forward for me. Jorginho at the base of that midfield, great in possession, he can start off all the Chelsea attacks. Out of possession is an absolute liability, no fault of his own. He can't run, he can't tackle, can't track runners, and that for me was shown at the weekend. He was heavily involved in those two Manchester City goals, and it's going to come back and bite them time and time again. I don't think Chelsea can win a league title potentially going forward with at the base of that midfield. Kante's got to go in there. For me, you're talking about an excellent midfield three. An excellent midfield three, Chelsea midfield three for me is Kante, the base of that midfield, and then you take your pick in front of that. Mount, Barkley, Kovacic, Loftus-Cheek. They've got some great number eights in the team who can get forward and get goals. But the fundamental problem for me for Chelsea going forward is always going to be the base of that midfield, how Lampard sees it. And the longer Jorginho spends there, when the big games come around, the games that really matter, he's going to be the weakness in that team and the base of that Chelsea midfield.
Yeah, I guess I meant that in the sense of when they're on the ball, and that's why they managed to clock up that possession statistic at the weekend. One of the big stories from this morning, when we talk about the sack race, when we talk about potentially managers coming in, is of course at Everton, Marco Silva. It's only a matter of time, you'd imagine, before things start to go wrong for him when he loses his job very, very soon. David Moyes in the mix this morning, Kenny, to go back to Everton. What's your take on that?
Wow. I think it's an obvious one known in terms of obviously his history there. A lot of good times there, good memories, good association with the club. I wouldn't rule it out. A lot of water's passed under the bridge since then, but I'm sure David Moyes would make the argument that, look, he's been around a different club, different experiences, he's a more rounded manager, more experienced manager. He might even claim he's a better manager now at the age that he is now than when he was and potentially when he left Everton Football Club. And I think that's a fair argument as well, Owen, but I really wouldn't rule it out. Silva's under a huge amount pressure there, but that's a big job. I think there'll be a lot of managers interested in that job. I wouldn't say he's the favourite, David Moyes, but I think there's an argument to a certain extent to be made for him going back there. But my gut feeling tells me no, but in football, absolutely nothing surprises me.
Yeah, I'm with you. No is the right answer, I think. How close is Pellegrini to getting sacked? Because obviously we know those owners are notorious for having thin patience.
Impatient, but they don't like giving their money away, Ger. I'll tell you that from experience. I had him up at Birmingham. I'll actually kill them to write that big fat cheque to get him out the door. He's on a huge salary there. I actually couldn't believe it. Somebody told me how much he was on. Again, he's another one. I think, Ger, they're looking around saying who's available, who do we actually want? Is he available at this moment in time? If not, probably keep paying his wages. Not as if potentially they're going to be looking at relegation, or certainly they shouldn't. So again, I think they'll just probably sit till the end of the season and wait for that ideal candidate. And if they're doing their job, Ger, actually put a few feelers out, get on the phone, trusted lieutenant, whoever it is behind the scene, make contact with people. Are you interested in a job here in potentially 6 to 8 months? Unless, of course, the same argument that I've made with Emery, unless, of course, the changing room just kind of downs tools, just stops playing for the manager, the relationship's broken, then again you have to look potentially just to get him out the door. It's almost becoming a bit toxic, and just get an interim appointment in. So for me, very much the situation at West Ham than probably that you're looking at with Arsenal over the coming kind of weeks and months.
Yeah, they're getting sucked into that relegation zone is the only thing.
Appoint Rafa Benitez is the answer here.
Rafa's getting 13 million netto in China. I can't see him turning his back on 13 million netto.
Would the West Ham have 13 million of the sort, 14 million? Like, is it just more hassle than it's worth? Does Rafa Benitez look at West Ham with a sense of PTSD from Newcastle United? Is it a similar sort of club in that regard, that they have loftier expectations than they really should?
I don't think it's similar. I think they need more money available to him at West Ham, and of course that's the only way he take the job. There's no way West Ham are going to give him the job and he's going to take it. And he doesn't have a guarantee of a certain amount of money to spend. I think he'd be a great appointment. I'm a huge fan of Benitez in terms of like being able to tactically set up a team. I think there'd be a huge amount of respect from the players towards him. He's got a bit of gravitas. I think Benitez is probably one of the few managers who does when he walks into a dressing room. So clearly, yeah, it's a great show. Could he walk out in the club in China? Yeah, absolutely. Practically every other manager does. I don't think the money would be a huge consideration, Jay. Surely not. Drop from 13 million to 8 million, sure there'd be a little bit, a bit of a check written somewhere along the way, like so. And I think Benitez has still I think he's still motivated to go and manage at the highest level. So I think that's an interesting possibility, and it wouldn't surprise me at some point when Benitez does jump that maybe it's back to the Premiership that he comes.
All right, good stuff, Kenny. We'll leave it there. Thanks a million, man.
Cheers, lads.